Hello, students. If you can hear us, we're just going to be getting started here on time. We just want to make sure that you all know to adjust your chat here to all panelists and attendees. So click on that chat button and then adjust to all panelists and attendees as we're going to go ahead and get started here shortly. This way we can make sure that we can connect with you and see all of your questions. So please let us know where you're from in the chat. Hello, students. If you can hear us, we're just going to be getting started here on time. We just want to make sure that you all know to adjust your chat here to all panelists and attendees. So click on that chat button and then adjust to all panelists and attendees as we're going to go ahead and get started here shortly. This way we can make sure that we can connect with you and see all of your questions. So please let us know where you're from in the chat. Hello, students. If you can hear us, we're just going to be getting started here on time. We just want to make sure that you all know.
Hey folks, I think we lost Hector. It sounded like it was on a repeat, but what he said is true. Welcome, we're so happy to have you. Please adjust your chat so that my name's John Beeson, by the way. I'm in the marketing department here at Academy of Art University, and we're so excited for this event. We have a great team here, also including some students tonight. It's gonna be a great presentation, so hey folks, we're grateful. I think we lost Hector. Sounded like it was on a repeat, but what he said is true. Welcome. We're so happy to have you. Hold on a second. Okay. Can you hear me now, everybody? Yeah. Okay, good. We're just waiting for some more people to come in. Welcome. Let's tell us where you're from. I see California, Los Angeles. Good to have the California people here. What else do we have? Texas, New Hampshire, Chicago, Des Moines, Iowa. I love Des Moines. I used to live there. It's a great town. Michigan. Let's see what else we have. Any international folks? Seattle, Kansas City, international in some ways. Check out the chat. We have a few people in there helping out. They'll tell you about some events that are coming up and also some ways to chat. Please use the attendees and panelists when you make a chat so that everyone can hear from you. We're just waiting for a few more people to come in and we'll get started here in a second. Let's see, where else you guys from? Let us know. I'm coming to you from the Bay Area myself. Some of the panelists, I'm not sure where they're coming from, but they'll tell us later, I think. So Oakland, that's good. Vermont, awesome. Berkeley, good, good, good. Let's see, should we wait another minute? New York, good. Chicago, man, I miss those places. I can't wait till this thing is over so we can go back visiting cool places all over the world. All right, I think we'll get started. Let me start by introducing the stars of the show tonight. Just give me 1 second. Thanks again for coming. Hold on 1 second. So tonight we have Phil Hamlett. He's the director of the School of Graphic Design, and I'll let him introduce himself. I can't find my papers because we kind of had a snafu this evening, so excuse us for 1 second. And then also the other person tonight is William Culpepper, who will be contributing as well as four students, right? Just 4 tonight. So okay, cool. So without further ado, oh, there we go. Thank you. So here, let me read. So I found it. So Phil Hamlett is the director of the School of Graphic Design. He joined Academy of Art University in 2004 as the graduate director, where he built the MFA program from scratch. Phil sees design as a means of problem solving and has worked with innumerable students, developing the ideas that would set them on their path to success. So he's perfect for this evening. Phil has served as president of the AIGA San Francisco chapter and as AIGA national board member, which is the driving force for design in the Bay Area. He's played a key role in setting the agenda for sustainable business practice within the design community at large. And I know Phil a little bit, and know he's a design giant in San Francisco, which is a good city to be a design giant in. And then William Culpepper will also be, he's also participating tonight. He's the online director for the School of Graphic Design. William has worked in all capacities of the graphic design industry, from typesetting at the local newspaper to being the creative director for national campaigns. His work has been featured in a number of industry publications, including CA, Communication Arts, AIGA's Design for Good, and more, and more. Prior to arriving at Academy of Art University in 2012, William taught at Virginia Commonwealth University, Northwestern Arizona University, and Ferris State University. So we're excited to have these design experts with us. And without any further ado, let's turn it over to the stars of the show. Turn over to Phil.
All right. Great. Thank you, John. And thank you everyone for coming out and spending some time with us on a Tuesday night. And thank you to everyone who's watching this a little bit later on. I understand it's going to be archived, so that's great. I am going to take just a few moments and provide you with a sort of a broad brushed overview of the industry and how School of Graphic Design relates to the industry, sharing with you some student work as we do that. And then I'm going to introduce our panelists for this evening. Our panelists come to us from all across the world tonight. I'm going to let them tell you about it themselves, but if you'll forgive me for just a moment while I get all Zoom friendly here and get my presentation in order, we'll begin. All right, everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
All right, here we go. So tonight we have 4 esteemed alumni with us. So there's myself and William. We're going to be your hosts for the evening. We have Hannah Coward, KP Gupta, David Spears, and Aaron Kanoy visiting with us. In just a moment, I'll give them some time to introduce themselves, and we'll take a look at some of their work. Welcome. Here we are, School of Graphic Design. Normally, we're in downtown San Francisco, and this is the crew. So we got William and myself, Director Emerita Mary Scott, Tom McNulty, and Jeremy Stout serve as our associate directors, and Karen Barrett is our department manager. Jeremy is going to be managing the chat tonight, so you'll see and hear from him in just a moment. Normally, there we are, downtown San Francisco, in the midst of the thriving creative community that it represents. And we are in 79 New Montgomery, one of the main buildings that the Academy owns in San Francisco. And there we are. There's our classrooms. This looks familiar to our panelists, I'm sure. They spent many hours there working to do whatever it is that we set them about doing. But increasingly, here's our classrooms. Like many organizations and institutions, we found ourselves living the Zoom life of late and adapting whatever it is that we do to a distance-based environment. That's been an interesting prospect for us, but it's been expedited by the fact that we've had online education for many, many years now. The entire degree is offered online, along with pretty much every function that we do. In fact, when our panelists introduce themselves, you'll find out how many of them both received instruction online and are also currently teaching online. But regardless of the setting, we're committed to creating environments for learning, right? That's a big part of what we want to do with School of Graphic Design, is make sure that we create the circumstances for your success, right? From the tippy top, kind of working down, we like to believe that anything can be improved through the application of design. So that's kind of the, that's the vision for the place. It's pretty straightforward, and every day we try to make sure that that comes true. There's a variety of ways that we go about doing that, and I'll let you read some of these things at your leisure a little bit later on when you watch the recording lately, so we can maintain a fairly brisk clip here. But you should know that our focus is on providing a practical gateway into a dynamic profession. Okay, we're committed to helping you build portfolios that secure you opportunities and jobs. That's the reason why we're here. There's the mission. If you want the boilerplate, you can come back and read that a little bit later. I won't bore you with it now. And there you are. I haven't met the folks that are online with us here tonight, except for our continuing students, who are, of course, always welcome. Always happy to see those guys in any setting. But our students come to us from everywhere. They come to us from all corners of the globe, from every walk of life. And we run a very diverse and very open and accepting student population. And I love it. It's one of my favorite parts about what it is that we do here. Our students come to us from many pathways. Some of you were the kid that could draw. Some of you were just wildly creative. For me, hand lettering mixtapes was my gateway drug, right? Everybody's got their own story about how they came into design. Regardless of what pathway you came in, what we work with is trying to help you understand and develop the process by which design is developed, because we are creative and we do get to do a lot of the things that our fine art brethren do. But ultimately, there's a yardstick for design that we all sort of have to conform to, and that is, does it or does it not work? Design is the application of creative skills to intent, right? We're doing things for a reason. And if that reason, it can be made apparent, and if that reason can actually come true, then we're doing our job. If that reason doesn't come together and can't be made to happen, then we have to reassess what it is that we're doing. So let's just take a quick look at what graphic design is, how we characterize graphic design. Well, you're looking at it, for starters, everything that you see here on screen and everything that you've encountered with this Zoom experience that we're engaged in, that's all graphic design, okay? You're likely wearing it. When I deliver this presentation to a live audience, I get to count how many people are wearing baseball caps with logos and are festooned with graphic tees, and have all kinds of branded evidence all over themselves that are representative of the fact that design is just literally all over us. It's everywhere. You can't walk down the street without seeing it. Asking people about design is like asking a fish about the water. It's just, there's so much of it, you just don't even really think about it. In fact, you've probably got an ocean of it in your pocket right now. You've got more design in your pocket and at your elbow. There's mine, never more than 18 inches away. You probably have more design on your person than even existed in the world prior to a few short years ago. At its most basic level, we characterize design as words and pictures used in combination to create meaning. There you go. Very simple equation. Sometimes the simple equation has simple manifestation, right? Sometimes the message and the meaning is very, very simple. Don't touch, danger, stay away, get out. But increasingly in our complex world, that meaning is very, very complicated, and designers have to work very hard to make sure that that is something that is understood and our intent is understood. Famous design guy Tibor Kalman, whom you'll study in our classes, characterizes graphic design as the use of words and images, more or less everything, more or less everywhere. So that's a big net. So to help people understand what we mean by that net, we typically carve graphic design up into 8 basic areas of practice. Now, everybody has different ways of slicing this up, and you'll get different flavors of this from different people, but this is how we see it and how we talk about it to help address some of the questions that people have when they walk up to this profession and to this discipline and don't know what it is, okay? So communication design, there's some of KP's work right there. Communication design is how we perceive companies that need you to understand messages, whether those are advertising messages or marketing messages about how they behave themselves and what it is that they do. Sometimes those are catalogs, sometimes those are reports, sometimes that's advertising. There's any number of forms that can take. But anytime that you're working with a company or an organization or an agency that wants you to understand anything that needs to be communicated, they've used words and pictures, then they brought a designer to the party, right? Editorial design, very closely related, but editorial design is a different business. It revolves around textbooks and magazines and things that are instructional in nature. So anytime you've been taught anything or anytime that you've learned something by virtue of reading it in the newspaper or being instructed in an app or whatnot, you've encountered editorial design. Typography is the form that those words take when they're in design's hand. Typography is used by all of the other areas of interest, but the reason why we call it out separately is it's its own business. It's its own concern. It's got its own heroes. It's got its own conferences. It's got its own publications. It's got its own award shows. You could spend your entire career within the area of typography. It's a massive concern. Typographic expression can be very wild and very crazy, and it can also be exceedingly technical and very finicky as well. Branding, big area of practice for design. You know, branding is that gut feeling that you have about a company or a service, and design is responsible for crafting all of the visual attributes that you perceive when you think of companies. A lot of people think of logos. And that's true. Designers create logos for old companies. They create old logos for new companies. They reconfigure existing companies to behave different ways. Designers do all kinds of things to advance the idea of branding. Now, sometimes that's with existing brands. So familiar brands, you know, need back to school campaigns every fall or holiday campaigns every Christmas. And so you're going to reconfigure Coca-Cola or Levi's for the 150th time, right? Or you're going to take a brand like Ferrari and imagine what happens when they invade your kitchen and move out of your garage, right? So there's a lot of different applications for these kinds of skills, right? Packaging is one extension of branding that a lot of people think of in the same way, because packaging is the tactile part of a brand. It's the part that you reach out and touch. It's the part that you take home. So anytime you walk into a store, any box, bottle, can, tag, you know, anything that you touch as part of that experience is packaging and falls to designers. Here in the Bay Area, that's a lot of spirits, and increasingly that's product design that edges into territory where people take those three-dimensional skills that they have from packaging and move that out into products and things. Environment design, a lot of times we're asked to extrude our abilities onto architectural services and the insides of interiors and galleries and retail experiences. Increasingly, design is being brought into the home in very interesting ways, which leads us to experience design. So I see some questions flying by the chat pod. There's always discussions about how graphic design and experience design relate to one another. Graphic design is the broader concern, and I'm going to show you here in just a moment. Let's get to this one slide, and that will make it clear. Experience design used to be, in most minds, configured by web design. Increasingly, app design dominates most people's perception of that. But the way that we look at experience design is that it's the integrated experience. There's always some digital stuff, there's always some physical stuff, and that stuff needs to splice together. It needs to be integrated in some fashion. And designers have a broader view of how all of that comes together. Experience design is a very, very important part of that, but it's a subset of how most brands articulate themselves. It's a large and growing subset, and so that's where a lot of our students are spending their time and applying their energy. But broadly speaking, experience design encompasses many, many things, and the skills that we learn there can be used in game design, they can be used in retail design, they can be used to extend products into new areas. There's any number of things that experience design can be used to do. But because our phones are in our hands and at our elbows, increasingly, whether you're learning guitar, checking the conditions at the beach, those are the kinds of things that a lot of design energy is poured into right now, is creating mobile experiences specifically. And then this last bucket is just to account for the fact that there's so many things going on that we'll never account for everything. So many of our students engage in things that exceed whatever the class parameters were, whatever the design brief might have been. The giraffe inhaler that you're looking at here came from a student project to repackage some medicine for children. The student took it upon themselves to create a fun inhaler, knowing that if the kids didn't want to actually engage with the product, it wouldn't be as effective. So nobody asked for a giraffe inhaler, but there we go, right? Students are reconfiguring business models. Students are rethinking life cycles to have more to do with the environment. Students are rethinking and reframing things like composting, instead of it being like this greasy civic obligation. It's this mystic connection with the earth. Students are advancing social causes, building product lines, and applying their design skills to an ever increasing set of digital capabilities that allow them to, basically just kind of go nuts, right? So we like to imagine that design is a product is limited only by your imagination. Like whatever you've got that you think you can channel at the world, we'll find a way to make that happen through the process of design. How do you know if you're right for School of Graphic Design? Well, you're creatively inclined. That's always a good thing. You like to make things. Visual learners do really well with us. So if you respond to pictures and images, and that's an incredibly useful way for you to understand the world, then turning around and using those is usually a relatively easy transition. Problem solving, lateral thinking outside the box is certainly something that's valued. Quick with unique ideas, so your friends might think you're kooky. You good communicators. If you're good with writing, you like to put things to words and frame things out, then that's great. And then if you despise math, and I see that Jeremy's telling you that you can actually like math, it's true. But I haven't had math in a long, long time. Not going to have math, free of math, and I'm happy about that, right? The industry, it's a growing industry. These things are responsible for much of that growth, but there's other factors as well. Increasingly, companies understand that their brands are their most valuable asset, and they're willing to engage in very involved processes to bring that together. Robots are coming for your jobs, but design jobs are going to be the last ones that they take. There's a human element to design that is very, very difficult to replicate. Computers and technology are integrally woven into what it is that we do, but the core of everything resides with the ideas and with the things that we come up with. It's an incredibly casual profession. You get to wear flip-flops to work, and I think one of the most important things, the profession doesn't even remotely resemble what it was when I got into it several years ago. It's changed radically over the course of my career. It will change radically over the course of your career. But the bottom line for me, the reason why I chose the world of graphic design is I wanted to get paid to be creative. I didn't want creativity to be something I did on the side while I filled my days with something I didn't enjoy. I wanted to be paid to be creative. And that came true for me. And we like to make that come true for our students. And that's still, in so many ways, the bottom line for this profession. I'll let you screen grab that. You'll see some other chat pod URLs fly by later, but that's where we can be found on the interwebs. There's some other industry links, so always encourage you to cross-check anything that we're saying with other knowledgeable industry sources. And would also encourage you to take a look at the graphic design section inside of the Spring Show website for the Academy, where you'll see the students from this most recent graduating class, as well as our reel for the year, and then our portfolios, which are housed at 79nn.net of our graduating class, is always a really good thing to look at to see what happens when you get to the end of this process and you're ready to take flight and move into the professional world. Boop. With that, I will now introduce our panelists. So we have 4 graphic design alumni tonight. What we'd like for each of them to do is just provide a little bit of an introduction for themselves as they're talking. I'm going to tap through some of their work, initially some student work, and then some of the professional work that they've done since leaving us. I'm going to give those guys a few minutes just to give us some sense of who they are. And then William and I are going to toss them a couple of questions to see what it is that they've got on their minds relevant to some of the concerns that you guys might have. And then we'll open that up to questions from the chat pod and see if our panelists can address some of those directly, okay? So Erin Kanoy, will you please step to the mic and tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone joining in the Bay Area and around the world and in the US. I'm Erin Kanoy. I currently live in Makati City in Metro Manila, Philippines. I graduated from the MFA program in 2016. I had taken all my classes on site. Currently, I run a small graphic design studio here called Make Saint Design, and I also work as a freelance senior designer with other Bay Area studios. I teach several classes at the Academy, ranging from just basic elements and principles of design to branding. So throughout my stay in the Academy, I really worked a lot on my thesis project, which you'll see here. So my thesis project is called One Weave, One Dream. And it's really about providing a livelihood opportunity for Filipino indigenous weavers in a remote area called Lake Cebu. And I had come to this thesis really wanting to tackle a project or a topic that really promoted my heritage as a Filipino. And when I started this, I was really thinking about just, wanting to showcase the fabric, talk about the weavers. But upon doing more research, I really discovered that there was more to this topic that I wanted to tackle, and really seeing design kind of more holistically and how different things affect different people, different communities. I learned that it wasn't just about, promoting the fabric, but really thinking about how to market it, what's the best way to kind of make it fit into our modern world. So not making this fabric just, live in the museum, but how can I incorporate this in interior design, through ways of framing it, and then even just thinking about the supply chain aspect, like how are these weavers able to gather the raw materials? How are they able to plant the different species that produce the dyes? And so I think, really discovering and uncovering those things about my topic, I think really speaks through to the type of education you'll get at the Academy, that it's not about just making things look pretty and just kind of this one-ended thing, but really figuring out how design lives and breathes in so many different aspects. So currently I've worked with a lot of different companies professionally. This project here is a branding project. And so again, using what I've learned in the Academy with this specific brand strategy, wherein the company was really thinking about, creating trails. So this is for a for a trail building company. And so thinking about it in terms of design, build, and ride. So that was kind of their original tagline, or the way that they did their business, wherein they thought about, designing the trails, building it, and then having cyclists ride it. But upon doing more research and really talking to the owners, it was more about really helping that, biking community thrive. So really making sure that the trails were well taken care of, making sure that cyclists kind of knew how to interact with kind of the surroundings. And so it wasn't anymore about just ending at riding, but it was more about creating that sustainable ecosystem when it came to mountain biking. So that was one really great project that we did, that wasn't just about creating a beautiful mark or creating just, visual elements, but it was really about taking a look at the company. This one was also a branding project that we did for a out-of-home company. So thinking about how you can use signage to really grab your audience and to tell them more about, the spaces where these signs could be built. And then for the last slide, these were patches that we created. So we tried to also work with a lot of businesses in the local cycling community here in the Philippines. And this one was a partnership that we had with the Odax Randonneurs Philippines. So this is a long distance, it's basically long distance cycling. And so they have cyclists travel several distances. So that's 200, 300, 400, and 600 kilometers within the span of a few or several hours. So there's kind of like a cutoff. It's not really a race. But with this, we helped create patches so that cyclists could collect them, hopefully complete all the rides within one season, and kind of really wear it with pride as a cyclist, as a Filipino cyclist, and a long distance cyclist.
Very nice. Thank you, Erin. Hannah, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, so I'm based in South Carolina in the greater Charlotte area. I did my undergrad at a different school, but quickly went back to complete my MFA. I also, like Erin, graduated in 2016. While I was doing the master's program, I worked as a substitute teacher in rural West Virginia, all grades, pre-K all the way to seniors, and also as a long-term science teacher during that time, which led me to concentrate on one of the more difficult areas of high school science, which is chemistry. It's famously horrible in terms of the visuals used to explain the content. And it is also very difficult to grasp the idea because at its core, chemistry is atoms combining. And any model of the atom that we're familiar with is not an accurate representation of how an atom is actually structured. So basically, the materials I created for this, I made a lot of diagrams, models, came up with a new way of showing atomic structure and the periodic table, resources for teachers and whatnot, and this stoichiometry game to help students learn how to do stoichiometry, which is actually pretty easy once you get into it. But all of this was basically one big puzzle, series of puzzles, and that was a big part of what I love about design is the puzzle part of it. And in this case, there was also a very challenging branding component, and I came out of this big project with my own way of coming to brand solutions when the problem is extremely difficult. A lot of us have this, fear of the blank page, fear of failure. If there's not a defined endpoint, as there often is not, if you have not properly defined the problem, it can be challenging to just get started. But through this process, I came up with a system for getting into the work and coming up with a variety of solid solutions that were inherent to the nature of the topic. So out of school, I went on to full-time information design for a firm in Denver. This is not one of the things for that firm, but I have also done information design work for past branding clients that have gone on to write their own books and needed diagrams for those. And so apart from the information design I did for the one firm, I always had my own private clients. I worked for a small firm in the Northeast that I'm still working for now. This is an in progress piece. This is an independent bottler in the Bay Area who I met through a series of word of mouth situations. All my work has come from word of mouth, and I have to say that all my professional work and success is due to the connections I made while I was here at the Academy. I have not, I don't think I have had many clients at all that I have not made that were not a result of some connection to the Academy. So this is a current project. Really excited. These should be hitting shelves around Christmas time in the Bay Area. It's a small batch, but very excited to see that come to life. And other than this, I teach information design here at the Academy, and a class that concentrates on how to take abstract ideas and emotions and make them into concrete, visually evocative brands. There's a name for it, but it doesn't really make sense. So that's what I've been doing. All my work, all my professional work, all my teaching work, all my education has been done online. When I collaborated with Peloton Apparel or their marketing team, all online. This was the pride pattern from the 50th anniversary last year of the Stonewall riots, and so the pattern is derived from the block, well, the area of Chelsea in which the Stonewall resides, and the Stonewall's block is solid. So it's a very minimalist idea, but it was nice to actually infuse something very abstract with meaning in that way. So yes, I've been, yeah, I'll wrap it up there. I'm kind of going over.
No worries, no worries. KP, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello all. Thank you for joining and thank you for having me here. I'm KP. I'm originally from India, but I've been in Bay Area for the past 8 years. First doing my MFA with Academy and now working here. So yes, the rigorous 3.5 years and then this MFA thesis at the end was really very rewarding. This particular thesis was playfully is essentially revolved around a thesis for kids and parents, and it's a topic which was very close to me because as I was doing my MFA, I was also raising a 2-year-old. So the mom in me and the designer in me sort of collaborated and found a meaning where I can utilize my network, my parent network, my understanding in children, and use that to my benefit as a designer. So the selection of toys and that the kids use in that manner while playing influences their growth at the formative years. And I think that's what something that challenged me to take this up, and how, playfully as a thesis can address this problem of selecting the most efficient toys for the children, because there are so many options in the market and it's growing even more with the digital toys in the market. So how can parents effectively select toys for their children, and what are the toys gives maximum opportunity for their kids to sort of build on? And as a part of the deliverable, I had an app, I had a magazine, I had a book series. And when I presented all these works as a part of my portfolio to IDEO, the design giant, that they are, they have a toy lab and a play lab in their organization. And they loved the thesis because they said that, this is a thesis that looks like a project that can come out of IDEO. So that was like very rewarding to hear that. And thank you to all the teachers and the great resources that I had access to while I was in academy that helped me shape a very well-rounded project. Not only, it was, it had all the information and parts and pieces, but also it validated out in the market because I ended up collaborating with a lot of independent toy designers, a lot of small time toy manufacturers who were looking to find their footing in the giant industry, but they didn't have really any means to enter the market, and they felt that maybe something like this could give them that visibility. So I used this project to showcase one of the toy companies called Uncle Bubble and facilitated event where kids could come and interacted with the bubble toys and sort of build their imaginations on it. That was one of the main thing. Currently, I am working with Google and working with the next billion users for it's a org or it's a department or team with Google, I would say, that focuses on building products, and by products I mean digital products for the emerging markets like India, Indonesia, Brazil, because as the digital landscape is growing and we are welcoming the next wave of users, the new billion users who are new to this world, and they have a lot of barriers, trust me, like even like the simplest of graphic design that exists on the screen doesn't really it's very difficult for them to comprehend or to navigate. So Google is kind of in the forefront in solving some of those challenges. This project particularly, which is up on the screen, was a collaboration between Google, IDEO, and Gates and Melinda Gates foundations. And this was like a 3-month-long project where I was collaborating with fellow designers, both from Google and from IDEO. And we went on a trip for India and Singapore, Indonesia, where we did a mini research with the target audience. We collect a lot of information, insight, and then we came back to the drawing board and came out with a bunch of provocations that could help designers back in the country who are designing products for these emerging markets, help them understand the market, because a lot of these smaller startups which are designing projects or products, they don't have the resources or even the understanding how to design for an audience who have technological challenges or who have low literacy or who have a lot of other different barriers that we might have to solve for. So this is up in the it's open to public, and I can also share the site, the website in the chat. Feel free to take a look at it. It's essentially a toolkit that helps UI UX designers to help design better apps, better products for markets who are kind of dealing with the challenges of emerging markets. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, KP. Oops, sorry, David, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm David Spears. I am in Washington, D.C. I have this was before I went to the academy. I have a BA in studio arts, a BS in psychology, and then an MFA in graphic design. I graduated in 2016, and currently I'm working as a designer and also in teaching. During my studies, I was also working as a full-time designer and I had some design experience. And so the reason why I went to get my MFA was I learned that I had very little experience and knowledge in typography. So the Academy specializes in and emphasizes typography, but what I got from the program was so much more than typography. I learned system designs and how do you brand and really solve problems. So for my thesis work, I had gone through a breakup when I was developing my thesis, and I realized that part of the issue was that there's a lot of communication via text. And I realized that I wasn't the only one that was experiencing this issue. So doing a lot of research, really understanding the audience, understanding the problem, I ended up developing an app that uses weather in the background to communicate emotion. So using animation to really add tone and emphasis and emotion to text, which took a lot of research. So my background in psychology came into, was really useful in this, and really understanding how you can use research and understanding your audience, understanding a problem, and even to troubleshoot different designs that you come up with through research. So not only did I develop an app, but this of course needed to be branded. So I created a brand book, a logo, a website, all these different deliverables that were around marketing and explaining this app and the work that I did. So currently I work for a very small design company called Project Design Company in DC. And we have some very large clients. So clients like AARP and National Geographic. The work that you're seeing right now was for the DC Mayor's Office. It was a link that we created between vaping and COVID-19. This was directed towards teenagers to deter them from vaping. So what we did was we took from the Spotify images of what teens think look cool and treated imagery of them vaping in that kind of cool look, but had these very serious messages, and also leveraged emoticons in this as well to really speak to them and to use irony to really create a message and to really hit home the message of not vaping. This next project, which is quite different, was for the Society of Neuroscience. And this is a coffee table book. This is the opening chapter spread. So what was really great about this project is that it created a custom typeface, which you see in that large T there, the drop cap. I made type look like it was neurons there. So this is really leveraging my typography skills and pushing hierarchy and really directing the eye, where to look first, where to look last, which is really, really emphasized through the Academy. And this last project was also for the DC Mayor's Office, a much more serious tone of tackling the opioid crisis. So this came about through a lot of research, really understanding the audience and capturing that moment when a person's ready to knock their addiction. And this was a very small piece, just one deliverable of a very large campaign that included bus ads and business cards and hand sanitizer, billboards. We also created an app that users could text to find where they could find a medication for if they were to overdose. So in many ways, this campaign was also very innovative in that this was the first time that the DC Mayor's Office had created an animated ad. This is actually an animated ad that's still, and also the idea of creating a text message overlay map where people could find this free medication. Currently, I teach experimental type. So going back to my love of typography and really enjoying teaching that.
Very well. So thank you to our panelists for a brief overview of what they've of some of their trajectory. I always, I know bits and pieces of everybody's story, but it's nice to hear it all laid out for our consideration. So thank you. We'd like to start off with a moderated discussion. William, you had some questions for our panelists?
Yeah, I sure do. And, as Phil mentioned, it's amazing.
Hey, William, you cut out. You're on mute.
It's amazing, as Phil mentioned, to see the work that the alumni have created at their time at the Academy, as well as what they have done in their professional life. So it's always great to see that and interact with that and share that with others. So applaud all of you for the work that you're doing in the past and now in the future too. And so one of the most exciting parts about tonight's workshop and event is getting these individuals together to have a discussion about some topics that we have thought are important for current day. And one of the things that we're going to start off with is the professional life of our panelists. And, a lot of times they talk about, as a designer and as an artist too, you should, think about design. You should think about design when you're sleeping, when you're eating, anywhere you go, everything you do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even take a break every now and then, right? But you really should be a part of that in your whole life. And so the first thing that I'm going to throw out to the panel is, how do you think like a designer in your daily life, and what kind of impact does that have on you as a designer, always thinking about design, and how can that relate to the projects you're working on, both professional as well as personal? I'll let everybody think about that one for a second. Is Hannah ready to go?
I was laughing because my personal life is very undesigned.
Right.
I pretty much, in terms of everyday design, it mostly has to do with organizing information and content, emails and notes and things like that are organized visually, bullet points, very easy to scan. But otherwise, I'm not a good person for this question.
How about you, David? How do you think like a designer in your daily life?
I mean, I can't escape it. When I'm given a project, even when I walk out of work, it still lives with me. I always find, for me, I always find inspiration in little things, or inspiration comes when I least expect it, a lot of times in the shower. But it's always, I look at things differently. I look at things upside down, look at things from a different angle. So it's about, for me, it's about curiosity and trying to understand something differently, or looking at something differently than how it's presented to you.
Good. I think that I'm going to chime in just real quick. I think that goes well. We talked about what it means to be a lateral thinker. And I think what David just described is good evidence of that. Like at firms like IDEO, KP might be able to tell us a little bit about how design training gets extrapolated up into design thinking. And I think that's all kind of a fancy way to think that our heads are wired a little bit differently than a lot of people. But by learning to apply design thinking skills to everyday problems, I think that we do make a lot of unexpected connections and stitch design back into our lives in interesting ways. And yeah, ditto on the shower. I have all kinds of things that just, come to me out of nowhere for whatever reason. That's a popular spot.
And Aaron, how many bike brands and bike components have you designed on your long kilometer cycling rides? I think you're on mute still, though.
You're on mute.
There you go.
Oops, there you go. Yeah, I think it's definitely true to me too. Like as a designer, you're just constantly thinking about things all the time. And with what William was saying, I'm an avid cyclist. So yes, when I'm on my long distance rides, I think of cycling and think of design. So I think of types of bike frames I want to paint, what designs those can be, even down to what I wear. Like, what am I communicating as a cyclist? Am I a casual cyclist? What are these colors that I'm wearing? Is it visible enough? If I know I'm going to be biking for a long distance, like I know black is not a good color to wear because I might get run over. So wearing brightly colored socks or things like that, even those little details, I think, are things that are kind of really ingrained with me.
And that's great. And KP?
Yeah, I mean, I call it my project space. Like this is something that I picked up while I was in IDEO, and it was like a practice that I did for each and every project. Like whatever project came during the IDEO time, I used to sort of completely surround myself with everything that was related to that project. The books that I read, the probably like the things that I watch, or even things that I do, like had some connection or the other with the project that can give me as much information, as much insight, as much experience into what I'm designing for or who am I designing for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I'm going to post up the Pinterest page for the School of Graphic Design, and understanding and thinking about your inspirations, whether they're in the design world or whether outside of design world, those all have an impact, on your daily life and travels. And so for our next question, all of us have passions and goals in life. And so what are some of your passions and goals as a professional designer that you strive for when you're selecting work, when you're working on projects, those kind of things?
For me, I think I try to make sure that I work with companies or brands that really resonate with things that interest me. I work a lot with active brands. So again, just really kind of merging work and play together. And also just making sure that I devote some time to working with kind of nonprofit organizations. So again, like for me, we partner with a lot of nonprofit cycling events. And so that's something that I make sure we spend a lot of time in.
For me, always, I have a family. You might hear some screaming here and there. But when you have family to support, you take jobs that are available to you, but so sometimes you're stuck in jobs that are, less than great. But it's always important to have passion projects, either just self-started projects or like Erin said, picking out causes that are near and dear to you, are friends that have businesses. They can't afford good branding, but they're, good people, good work, but they need an image that reflects that. And that's something you can offer them. It feels good. And generally with these projects, you have the creative freedom to do the really good work that you often don't get to do for corporate clients that have very restrictive standards.
Yeah. Right. And, I think it's one of the things too that we share with our students is it's okay to interweave your interests and your goals and your desires into your work too. And it usually makes it stronger. And it sounds like, both Erin and Hannah have done that. And I think the others have as well. And, be confident about what your personal interests are and how you can use your design skills to better that community or that world of what your passions are.
I'd like to riff on something Hannah said just a moment ago and redirect back to a question I saw emerge from the chat pod. There's an Oscar Hoffman in Indiana asking about, what it's like to work in and outside of California. And there were some other questions earlier about, can I bootstrap my degree? Can I just read a bunch of books and take a UX class and be a designer? I think what I'd like to hear from the panelists, I think Hannah touched upon this in her introduction. She also talked about it a little bit just now, is that a lot of our students, and certainly this group, are living a very distributed life. Even before the pandemic, Williams in Montana, our base of operations is here in California, but our students come from all over the world. They crisscross with us in a lot of various ways, and they wind up kind of wherever. So, Hannah's in South Carolina doing work in the Bay Area, despite having received her education online, right? So I think it's interesting to see the kinds of networks that people create. And I'm not sure that's going to be possible when you read a stack of books or when you try to bootstrap a design education. So could maybe the question was directed at Aaron and at KP, but I think any of our panelists would be qualified to answer like what it's like to work. How do you develop a network and how do you work in distributed fashion? Anybody want to take a swing at that?
So for me, it was really a lot of the connections I got through the academy. So before I moved back from the Philippines, I was working at a design studio called Celery Design Collaborative. And when I had moved back, I continued working with them remotely. So that was really great. And then after kind of that freelance period was over, I got in touch with actually a lot of my classmates from the academy, and I ended up working with them or kind of under them remotely. So I was working for two startups that were San Francisco based, but I was doing it already here in Manila. And both of those were from really, really good friends that I made in the program. So I think the good thing about the academy is that you get to really work with a lot of influential people in the industry and even your professors. A lot of these are industry professionals, so that they're very, very active within, whatever it is that they're doing, and you'll get a lot of networking opportunities throughout their time there.
Yeah, plus one to Erin. Same for me. All the networks and all the recommendations and all the connection that I made during the academy, or simply like, all the teachers like kind of give the direction as to, what is probably an appropriate path to take if I'm seeking a direction towards a particular area within graphic design. If I'm interested in a firm, what are the things that I should be aware of? I think these are the things which are very difficult to gauge if you're not connected to an organization, because all these words of wisdom, it's comes very helpful and handy when you're preparing yourself to put out there in the big world.
Yeah, I want to add to that too. And it's not the hard skills that you learn about design in the academy, but it's also it's learning how to talk about your work. That's so important as you work with clients on explaining why you did something and actually understanding why you did something. It's really the thought and the research that you just can't get from books and interacting with professionals as your professors.
Very good. William, I know that we promised our panelists we'd have an 8:15 stop for them. Are there questions from the chat pod that we want to, sorry, I'm looking at my clock. Are there questions from the chat pod that we want to address? I see a few things rolling by that I've tried to keep a tab on, but.
And
I have
you can answer some of those. And one thing that I want the panelists to think about too are some, we have some prospective students here, and let's think too about some tips for them to be successful at a university level, at a school of graphic design, and sort of share some of your wisdom both as a designer, as an alumni, as well as a teacher for those after we answer some of those chat questions.
My question aligns with that, William, real quick. A lot of you mentioned that you teach, and so I'm wondering, I have two questions. Are there specific benefits you've noticed to teaching online now that we're in the situation, the world we're in today, what are some silver linings to that? And can you do graphic design as a job remotely? I mean, you've kind of already answered that. Hannah's and you guys are all over the world, but is it, what are some benefits to online learning? None.
William, why don't you speak to that first as the online director?
Okay. You know, one of the main benefits that I see is what we see in front of us. It's a global student body, and so your peers have a global interaction, just like they do on site. And it's amazing to see the different perspectives that everyone has from that global audience. It also allows individuals to have a more flexible schedule. So it sounds like several people, excuse me, in this panel have children, or they have working lives. David mentioned he was working full-time while he was going to school full-time. I'm also an alumni of the program, and I was teaching, going to school, and also working all at the same time. So it allows a lot of flexibility in terms of keeping yourself financially fit, as well as going to school and having a very structured environment that you live in. And so I think that's a really strong benefit of an online program. Also, the School of Graphic Design online program has been around for a very long time, and it's very robust, and everything is organized and synchronized between on-site and online. The curriculum is, and so it's a very sound and strong curriculum that can function on its own and has for a long time. So I think we have a lot of pride in that. And I think too, the faculty that we bring to the table that teach the students, they're also from across the whole world, all different time zones, all different perspectives, and almost all of them are also working part-time or full-time designers. And so they bring that perspective in as working designers into the classroom. What are some other benefits from our other faculty or as an alumni experience that you think should be shared from the online perspective?
So I can say that going from being a student to teaching, when I moved to teaching as a teacher, I'm still learning. So it really feels like the class is very interactive. And as much as I'm teaching, I'm also learning from the students and getting a deeper understanding of design and the possibilities. So like I said, the classroom is just very interactive. There's a lot of discussions that I host every week. So it's very, very active, very lively classroom.
Thank you. That's great. Both of you guys. Thank you.
And did you have a part two to your question, John?
Oh, no, you guys got it. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. And so, as I mentioned, when John also had his question, what are some tips you might have for potential students to be successful in a graphic design program, a school graphic design program at the Academy of Art University?
I would say the most important thing is to remember that your portfolio is everything as a designer. Like I said, I was living in rural West Virginia when I was going to school. I worked as a substitute, so I could kind of choose my hours, and I made the decision to work less as I progressed in my degree so that I could put the time necessary into my projects. So, my senior year, I made so little money as a working person that it was bad. I made almost no money that year, but the payoff was incredible coming out of school. And going back to the question of the benefits of online, I was out in the middle of the woods, but I was able to do this program, learn from amazing people all around the world. And because I was living out in the woods, the cost of living was very low. I didn't have commute time cutting into my ability to work on projects. And, you know, I had family and support right there. I didn't have to go across the country to a strange place and kind of hack a new life together while also trying to become a better designer.
Good.
Awesome.
Before we turn our panelists loose, I see one theme that is emerging in the chat pod that I think it would be interesting to address. So I confessed that my gateway drug was mixtape hand lettering. I also was kind of the kid that could draw. How did you come into this? Were you handy with a camera? Were you making posters for your friends' bands? Like, how did each of you, what was the gateway into the profession for you in high school or wherever? Start with Hannah.
Yearbook.
Yearbook.
3 years of yearbook.
A very likely path. Very good.
That's
David, how about yourself?
I took a class in undergrad about Photoshop and I was hooked. I just, it's that feeling of when you lose yourself and you're like, oh, I just spent 3 hours doing this and it feels like 1 hour. I knew that it was right for me.
Yeah, good. KP, what got you into all this?
I was a shy kid, so I think most of my expression and communication came through drawings and doodles. I think, yeah, so that was I recognize that was my way of expression.
Yeah, okay. And Erin?
Same here. I was always into drawing, painting. I think I was also just really crafty. I knew how to sew like as a kid, so things like that. And then funny enough, my dad didn't want me to take fine arts because he thought there was no money and he wanted me to go into something more digital. And so that's when I kind of snaked my way into graphic design.
Yeah, okay, good. William, how about you?
I wanted to be an architect when I grew up. So it was hand drafting and hand letter forms and architectural drawings, and Buckminster Fuller was my original sort of interest in design.
Very good. Cool. I think William and myself are going to remain with the panelists, or I'm sorry, with the rest of the student attendees to answer any additional questions that they might have. Are there any other final questions for our panelists, or do our panelists have anything else that they would like to contribute before their time with us closes today? No, we're all good. We're that good. We were able to cover every single thing that everybody's interested in, and all of our panelists have said their piece.
I can't thank you guys enough. I learned a ton.
All
So
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Very good. Thank you to our panelists. Hector, John, William, and myself are happy to remain and address some of the outstanding questions. And I'm not sure what Jeremy's plans are, but he's done a great job monitoring the chat pod. So
Jeremy.
Thank you all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys. You were
Thanks for having
great.
me.
Yeah.
You guys, awesome. All right, thank you all. Panelists can stay, they can take off, but we have a few people still here, quite a bit, 40 some odd people here. Any questions you have for Phil or William, or looks like a couple panelists are still here, please put them in the chat if you don't mind, and we'll try to get to those.
Yeah. While we wait on anybody with any specific questions, there was a theme that was percolating a few questions back about like what skills do I get to use as a designer, or what skills do I get taught? Well, if you think of design as words and pictures used together, that's a pretty broad envelope. So when we start actually working with words, that's where the typography comes in, and typography is an incredibly it's just one of those things. Like for me, typography is what David just described. Like I get lost in it. Like I'm sitting there like doing my kids like invitation to their birthday parties, and everybody's like, no, it doesn't. You don't need to work on it that hard. It's just like, leave me alone. I'm in the zone, you know. So I think that, you know, having the ability to work with words and to enjoy playing with words, I think is really important. And I think that for some people, that gets, they're the ones that are grinding on their notebooks and hand lettering these crazy things on their notebooks when they're in high school. Like those are the ones that, they track into that side of the equation pretty quick. On the image building side, a lot of people come to us and they're either handy with a camera, they take good photos, or they're like David, they wind up kind of tinkering in Photoshop. And like, that's really fun to be able to just kind of like look at the image as an elastic thing that you can manipulate. And so whether you're the kid that could draw, or whether you're just like really, really excited about the idea that imagery is like Play-Doh that you get to kind of play with, that's a fundamental design skill and a talent that we cultivate and build. And then when you find yourself in our classrooms, we start to try to splice those together. We try to look at the ways that you can manipulate words, the way that you can manipulate imagery, and put those together into new combinations, right? And so that can take any form. Yeah, it's great when you can draw. Yeah, it's great when you can take pictures. Yeah, it's great when you can do lettering. None of those things are required, though. You can come at design from a million different pathways and find gratification inside of it. So it makes it difficult to talk about the profession sometimes because it can be so expansive. There's so many things that ladder up to what design can be. Okay. So hopefully that's helpful. The way that I like to work with people is I like to find out what they're interested in, right? I like to do this. Somebody's always got like some jam. Everybody's always got something that they're really into. And once I understand what that is, I can usually start to pull out from them where that might go, what kind of a pathway that might represent in design, because it's a big sandbox and there's a lot of places to play inside of it. So hopefully that addressed some of the themes that were percolating a few in the chat pod a few questions back. Powerful messaging on important subjects. Well, it's kind of that classic Spider-Man thing, right? So like with great power comes great responsibility. So like once you learn to manipulate words and pictures and create meaning, how you apply those things becomes of interest. And so I have a personal passion associated with the application of design to, social initiatives and specifically sustainable things. That's my bag. And so in school, we encourage that. We want to see people apply their skills to things that have meaning and things that are worthwhile. So hopefully, that should be evident in some of the work that you see. Yeah, and thank you, Jeremy. Jeremy's pasting in some AIGA stuff where you can oftentimes find examples of our students' work because we do what we can to help promote that work and push that out there.
And I want to add to that too, sticking around just a little bit. So at its core, design is about communication. So, our responsibility is to communicate things to audiences to help them solve problems. So it's design is ripe for addressing important and sticky, difficult subjects. That's kind of the thing that I enjoy about design is that you tackle so many different subjects. You have so many complex problems, but how do you communicate them? How do you affect change in the world?
Yeah. And communicate does reside at the core of so many design endeavors. And that's my professional background. I spent most of my professional career working in communications firms with communication departments, trying to get ideas across. But what's happening, now that these things dominate our lives, what we're seeing as designers is that our ability to communicate translates very readily into the need to get a car across town, right? So we've got students that go and work at Uber and they're doing UX, and we have trained them to manipulate type and manipulate images to help communicate ideas. And we've seen that that's a very ready adaptation of the idea when the idea is, I need to get a car across town, right? Or I need to do X, whatever X might be. So there's a degree of functionality that comes with these things that places a premium on communication and getting ideas across like really quickly when people are in a hurry to get things done. And so that's why so many designers find themselves now wound up in UI and UX and helping build digital products. Spider-Man. Yeah, so, you know, comic books, you know, are one of those things that live inside of design's purview. But what you're going to find is that the people that have a better stake in that particular industry are the School of Illustration and Visual Effects, because so much of that world is like revolves around wrist skills. You know, you have to be able to draw. Now, sometimes those properties, like I guarantee you that DC and Marvel and Dark Horse, you know, all those guys hire graphic designers. I guarantee that, right? Because they are typically the people that are responsible for making sure that there's covers and spines and title pages, and that the artwork functions in book form, or it's served up online in a way that makes sense. So I guarantee you there are designers at any of those companies helping frame out the way that the artwork flows and the way that the artwork behaves. But in terms of like knowing that industry backwards and forwards, that's going to be the illustration guys and the visual development guys.
Right, exactly, Oscar. You know, and one of the things too I was thinking about, Phil, is, you know, part of this component is, you know, copywriting and the messaging that you present to the audience. And, you know, that can be related to comic books as well, as the flow and the story and the narrative of that. And, you know, part of the responsibility of a designer is to have that flow and that narrative and a message and a voice that the audience can read and see and act upon too. Mm-hmm.
And one good way to think, so when you talk about like helping people understand what it is that they're going to act upon, like if you look, if you remember that bottle that Hannah had developed where there was an information graphic attached to the bottle, and you think about something like gameplay, right? So a lot of our designers will go work at like Electronic Arts or Riot Games or something like that. They're not going to work as game designers, they're going to work as graphic designers. But what those companies are figuring out is that, you know, 10 or 15 years ago, whoever it was that was drawing the werewolves was also the person that was drawing the dashboards and the head-up display and the social media connections and all that kind of stuff. And as those games have gotten bigger and more sophisticated, they've realized that, like, you know what, the guys that are doing the werewolves just need to do the werewolves, right? What we need for somebody to do all the health and the hit points and the gameplay and all the, you know, the cloud-based delivery of all that information, like, we need designers. We need people that can manage like information and provide us with status and provide, you know, so when, you know, when you're in call to order and you're taking hits and there's a graphic that shows your health going down and all that, like, that didn't come out of the game designers, that came out of the graphic designers that are providing you the frames for which you're understanding the gameplay, the ways that you're communicating with your teammates and all that kind of stuff. So if you take some of those ideas, you can kind of transpose those back to the comic book industry. Yeah, we're, you know, designers are the people that are, you know, framing that out so that people understand what's going on.
Yeah, and that Scott McCloud book is a great example. Jeremy, thanks for posting that. That's a highly recommended book of designers should have.
There's also, I'll put his name in the chat pod. You'll have to Google him or something. I don't know his handle, but graphic designer Chip Kidd, he has a Batman book that he created.
Yeah,
that is all memorabilia of the lifetime that he has spent collecting Batman stuff, and that eventually he's such a fanboy that eventually translated into him doing books and creating, like, he actually became a Batman contributor and creator based on his overwhelming fandom and design skills. So it is possible to make those things come together. Memoir, I can't spell though, so that I can't do math and I can't spell. So
I'm a big fan of Chip Kidd. I like his stuff a lot. So.
I can't spell Batman memorabilia, so I'm just gonna put Batman book, and you guys will have to find it and spell memorabilia on your own.
Couple new questions there. Did you see? Let's see.
Yeah, and there was a question about, you know, portfolios and Hannah had mentioned she hardly made any money that her senior year when she was in her portfolio class, but as soon as school was over, she had, full-time opportunities. And I believe this question is basically asking how much energy and time should I put towards my portfolio, and that sort of that benefit out of it. And I think whatever you can put towards it is going to exponentially increase those rewards when school is over. I often say that there's nobody can take away your degree from you once you have it. And so put as much as you can into it, and it will give you rewards that will pay off for the rest of your life and your rest of your working career. So do whatever you can to beg, borrow, and steal, sleep on random, I guess not now, but couches, and whatever you can do to afford to spend as much time and energy and focus on school as you can, especially in portfolio.
Yeah. Looks like Jeremy's found some openings in the comic book field for everybody. So that's our man. Jeremy's great at figuring stuff out. So I think that, what I like, for the takeaway to be to that line of inquiry is that, like, designers we're everywhere. We belong at every party. And so, one of the parlor games I like to play with people is just, can we find an intersection of design and that thing? And the answer is usually yes, right? There was a question that filed by around game development. So we don't necessarily have a formal collaboration with game development. Like, we don't have shared curriculum or classes, but we do have opportunity. Like, the school of game design is adjacent to us. I had a meeting with the director this morning. So if there are things that you want to accomplish in the world of game design, yes, there are pathways within the academy to scratch that itch. So, and not just in game design, there's 24, John, help me, 24 academic departments. And so we have shared space with all of them in some shape, form, or fashion. And I think that's one of the things that makes the academy a really interesting creative ecosystem, is that there is so much there that we can cross-reference with.
And students take classes outside of the graphic design major too.
Yeah, I was gonna say my two electives were outside of the graphic design program. I took a game design class, which is very interesting, and then also it was an After Effects class, motion graphics class. So there's definitely an opportunity to work outside of the program.
And that mimics real life when you work. When you're in the professional world, you work with other people in other departments. So it lines up with the real world. So, thanks.
Yeah, and that's especially true. So we talked a little bit about product design, developing apps and things like that. And the comment that John made about building things in teams and working with large groups of people is especially true in that universe, because if you're going to invest heavily in the development of an app, and it's going to be, for some companies, it's the whole company is the app. Like, what would Uber be without an app, right? So for some companies, the app is the entire company, and they're going to spend a lot of money. They're most likely going to be investing that money into teams. And so design is pretty much always a team sport. There's very few places where you'll be working in a complete and total isolation as a designer. But in that product design space, you're going to find yourself on very large teams working on, very large projects over very long time horizons. So what else?
Hey, Victor, I don't know if you can hear us, but anything you want to add as far as, applying to the academy, stuff like that?
Sure. There was a question earlier. I think Jeremy fielded part of it in the chat pod, but I think we can elaborate on it a little bit. What should I put in my portfolio, or what's legitimate in a portfolio? No rules in a knife fight, right? Anything you want to put in the portfolio is fair game. So your portfolio, regardless of your station in life, should be your best foot forward, your best visual foot forward, and whatever you think is testament to your skills. And so the academy is an open enrollment institution. So when we look at your portfolio, we're making placement decisions. We're looking at your portfolio and deciding that you have the kind of skills that would allow you to waive out of this or that class, or we provide you some other direction about where you might be going. But anything that you've got is legitimate to put in a portfolio, and that's coming and going. So a lot of our students will create work while they're in school. They'll create work for clients, or they'll do stuff on their own. And they always ask, like, can I put that in my portfolio? I'm like, of course you can. Like, your portfolio is yours, and it should be your best foot forward, whatever that might be. Okay.
And you don't need a portfolio to get in here. I mean, we help build it, right? I mean, I think for grad school, you need a portfolio, but for undergrad, you don't need a, we're open enrollment.
That's true. Yeah. So, but people ask all the time, even despite the open enrollment, people ask all the time, like, what should I do with a portfolio? So, but yes, that is an important distinction. Like, it's not a barrier. So for many schools, it's a barrier, right? They want to look at your portfolio, and then you will or will not qualify to be there. We give everybody the chance. And so one of the things that I've seen over the course of teaching for many years is that success comes from unlikely places. We have people that come into our program that, beat their head against the wall in whatever other pursuit or whatever other thing they might have been doing, and find traction with us. And so we always, the philosophy of the place is to keep that door open, and we'll find that out. And that's always been, a tremendous source of inspiration and pride for me, is that, we get people from all over the place and make it make sense for them.
Good. Hey team, I switched over to the cell phone, so I think I'm able to communicate a little bit here. Sorry, I had for all of you that are out there, my name's Hector Verdugo. I'm the Senior Vice President of Admissions. I was originally going to be here to host, and I had the internet said you're not going to be here tonight. So anyway, but hey, one thing I do want to do is I'd really like to maybe talk upon a couple of points really quickly, because I do these workshops every single Tuesday, and I'm very blessed to be surrounded by so many talented people in the academy. One of the things that I did want to ask though, Phil, and maybe this is just directly to you, is when it comes to graphic design, I always find that this is one of the majors where the enthusiast sometimes doesn't understand the difference between what's the gap between being a professional and somebody that knows software. So speaking more to the program, and this program, for whatever reason, I think almost more than most others, maybe other this one or photography, but what would you speak to the difference of becoming a professional as a graphic designer rather than somebody that's more just software driven? Sure.
I'm gonna borrow from something William said earlier, right? So he expressed an interest in architecture, and I think that sometimes I often lean on other professions as metaphors for describing design. And so forgive me if I pick on the world of architecture, but I might be able to make a wall. Like, I might be a carpenter. I might be somebody that can come in and hang a door. I might be a general contractor. I might be somebody that could, actually build something physically. But nobody's ever going to call me to make a skyscraper. Nobody's ever going to call me to design their house. Nobody's ever going to call me to actually create something that has not already been specified. And so if you know software, you probably can build the walls of graphic design. You can probably, there's going to be some things that you can probably do, and a general contractor is going to call you to do those things, right? But nobody's ever going to call you to actually address a larger problem. Nobody's going to call you to envision the building that needs to happen here. And so what happens for our students is that they need to know how to build walls. They need to come into the program and appreciate, we need to know that walls, back to the three wolves, like, this house is made of straw, this one's made of wood, this one's made of stone. We need to know enough about those materials that we understand the wall building of our profession. So yeah, you do need to be able to run the software and make Photoshop work, and have, adjust pixels and create Bezier curves and do all the things that software programs require of you. But when we start building those into larger constructs like campaigns, like, that far exceeds the technical capacity that is required to contribute to the profession at the basic building block level. So did that help? Or William, you want to chime in on that, or David, anybody?
I would like to chime in because I think that's such a great question. If you look at a lot of portfolios on Behance or some other sites, you'll see some great work, and it's eye candy. In other words, it really doesn't have a lot of depth and concept to it, and there's not a lot of thought, or you can't really make a connection between what you're seeing and what they're trying to communicate. And so by being at the Academy, I can tell you that, and this is what ties into what I said earlier about how I started my reasoning for going to the Academy was to learn typography and learn so much more. That so much more is concept building and expressing concepts through design. It is, how do you communicate something? How do you communicate a thought? How do you make connections? How do you create connections through design? It's that kind of deep concept that clients love, that businesses love, that audiences love because it's engaging, that you learn at the Academy.
Right. And that's what sells your idea to a client. It makes them want to pick your work because of the concept and the ideas behind it. And I think you too had also mentioned, David, that's really important to talk about your work in order to be able to be a successful designer, having good concepts and also being able to explain and talk about your ideas and why they're important.
Yeah. And speaking just from a professional vantage point, like I went to so many meetings as a professional where you walk in the room and the client can't even articulate the problem, right? The client is just like, it hurts. Like, nobody gets our business. Nobody understands us. And that's what you've got to work with, right? And so from that, you then have to build a pathway to, okay, what do your clients currently think about you? What do you want them to think about you? How might we shift that? Like, let's talk through that, right? And so, yeah, eventually that'll get down to, we're going to build pixels to like make something that delivers on that. But there's a long journey. Oftentimes there's a long journey between what somebody wants to happen and the chopping together of it that most people perceive of when they think of software and some of the basic tools that you enter into the profession with. So those are important skills. Those are important things to know. But as you start to rely on higher brain functions and you start to kind of chop your way up through larger applications of what design can be, you'll find better reward, you'll find more clients, you'll find more gratifying work, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we want to make sure that we talk about design as a big sandbox. We want to talk about it as this expansive thing. And regardless of what pathway you might have chosen to come into it, there's all these things that you could do. And then hopefully armed with that knowledge, you'll pick and choose the places that are right for you and right for your skills.
That's great.
Did we get it?
Yeah, no, I really love that answer because I think that it lines up with a lot of the consistency that I hear from every director in every major, that there's going to be a blend of technical skills, professional skills, people skills, and problem solving. And all of that is accumulated over tons of just hours of hard work and really just putting in the effort to grow as an artist, not just with the technical skills, but with the problem solving, the people skills, et cetera. I mean, all of that rolled up over time is what gets you the type of skill set and portfolio that are going to help you to actually be employable.
Yeah. And also the other thing too that I like to throw into that conversation is that, for things that are really important, I mean, software is hugely important. The ability to manifest the work and create it is hugely important. And we want to make sure that David can go and spend 3 hours in Photoshop and get lost there, right? So we want to make sure that we support that kind of activity because that's where a lot of creativity comes from. But for some of that, we partner out. Like, so currently what's happening alongside what we're doing here tonight is that Adobe, one of our very, very present and very capable partners, they're running a big conference, a big virtual conference right now called Adobe Max, and they want you to use the Creative Suite so badly that they give the instruction away. And so we lean on them very heavily for, our students get the Creative Cloud subscription by virtue of their tuition. And with that comes a tremendous, we have a very significant relationship with them where they come into our classrooms and they throw us all kinds of materials, and our students beta test their stuff because they're just right down the street. And we've always got back and forth with them about, that they're asking us, like, what can we do to help support you? And we're always asking them, what can we do to have our students better leverage your software? So a lot of those things, we don't necessarily do them directly, but we create, we have an ecosystem where there's all kinds of people that we partner with and that we work with to make sure that everything happens the way that it should. And they're a fantastic partner, and we've got a long-standing relationship with them that we've had for many, many years. What else you got for us, Hector?
Well, I'm not seeing too many more questions in the chat. But I would just want to tell anybody, I apologize for coming in here late. I've been in the chat this entire time. But I just want to get a sense in the chat. I see there's still about 19 people out there. Are any of you students currently in high school? Are any of you international students? Are any of you looking for a master's degree or an undergraduate degree? If you let me know, what I'd like to do is provide you some information so that there's a ton of different things our team does. We actually work with students one-on-one before a student applies to the university. If you are ready to apply, no problem, that's great. But if you have questions, things that you want to go over, anything that you want to talk about, what we like to do is offer you a one-on-one so that we can sit down and make sure to really go into detail what this program is all about, make some recommendations. I know Phil, William, they constantly look at portfolio work on a daily basis to try to help give students the right advice and the right career options, etc. So what we want to do is just try to get to know you and try to help you out. So anybody that's still out there, I'd love to just make sure that we can connect via email. I'm going to go ahead and put a few different links in the chat as well. The first link right here is for anybody that's looking to apply to the university. I'm going to go ahead and drop that link in right now. You can see that right there. That should take you directly to the application. If any students are out there that are currently in high school, if you're currently enrolled in high school, 9th grade through 12th grade, we have what's called a pre-college art experience program. That's right there. It's a program it's really geared for students while they're in high school to be able to take courses for free, to be able to start figuring out where you fall in that design field. So if you're interested in graphic design and you want to take some courses, you want to build some skills, we're going to have classes coming up this spring that you can take for free. If anything, I would just tell you, whether you're dead set on graphic design or you're still trying to figure it out, I would tell you take a course anyway. It's only going to help you to cement your decision and validate that you're in the right field and really get your skill sets developed before you actually start your college courses. I'm going to also go ahead and throw in a couple of other links here. Normally, I would do these earlier in the event, but I do want to just continue to drop. I've been putting in my information here for students to email me, but really one of the first steps would be to just send me an email so that we can connect and start a conversation and figure out a good time to talk so that we can explain our program. One of the last things I want to do is I wanted to just throw a link into our events page. I know graphic design department here has thrown in a bunch of different links to some of their pages as well. This page right here will take you directly to the upcoming events that we have scheduled. We have events every Tuesday, sometimes Thursday, sometimes even Saturdays. Sometimes we're doing 3 or 4 a week. I would just say you go straight to that page. We have a ton of different free workshops where you can get involved with the university. So I would definitely encourage anybody out there to please check out that link and join as many as possible. So, but yeah, I'm going to kick it back over to you, Phil, or William, or David, or anybody. If there's anything you'd like to add on before we start to wrap up here, is there anything else you guys would like to cover or say? I haven't really seen much in the chat here in the last few minutes.
Guys, anything?
Yeah. No, I think that was a good conclusion. I think we should thank everyone, all the panelists that were here with us, and David for sticking around too, and all the work that the admissions team and marketing team do for us and for our community.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. So thank you everyone for hanging with us tonight. I just like to say that it's an incredibly rewarding discipline. I've been involved with it for pretty much all of my adult life, and I have no regrets. It's been a great ride, and I can't imagine picking anything else. If I were to win the lottery, I'd probably still be doing, I'd probably buy a letterpress and move to the desert and keep doing graphic design somewhere, right? It's just, it's a compelling thing. So whether we see you in our classrooms or not, I hope that you can find a way to make that work for you. And hopefully we can find some shared space together to do that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, everybody.
Yeah,
All right.
I want to thank David and Phil and William for this tonight. It's really great. So thanks for hanging out. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, Jeremy, too, in the background.
Indeed.
Jeremy.
Big help for Jeremy. Yes, indeed. Great. Thank you, David, for riding it all the way down. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
All righty.
Thanks so much.
All right, then. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Ciao.
Hey, Online Ed, I'll hang back just for a second here in case there's any questions or anything. I can drop my email or links.
Yeah, Hector, I'm here. Stay with him. Let me know.
Thanks, Tim. What a meltdown, man. I cannot believe this internet just went out completely on me. Like right before we were going to start, too.
Yeah, it's dropped out like crazy or what?
Oh, it was miserable. I was able to get on my cell phone. So
Yeah.
I could hear. Yeah, but I kept the computer logged in so I could at least do the chat. So
Yeah, I'm worried because I'm close to like the Oakland Hills and stuff. And like the last couple days, we've had the power outage and stuff. So I was worried if it's going to run down my way, you know?
yeah, this really hasn't happened before. I've had it be slow, but I haven't literally had to just go out like that.